Hello, and welcome to the John Ark Show. On today's show, we interview actor Burt Ward, who played Robin in the original Batman TV show. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on the notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from more than 100 celebrities for just $19.95. So give it a try. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Burt Ward. Hello, Burt. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine. Hello, citizen, to you.
So, Burt, you starred in the original Batman TV show, which everybody fell in love with because the world had never seen anything like that before. Can you tell us how you got the job?
Okay, I was studying acting professionally and at UCLA, where I was a student. And I was assisting my father on the weekends. He was a prominent real estate agent in Beverly Hills, California. And on the weekends, when he would have open houses, I would sit on some of the houses and people would come in. I hand out brochures, answer questions. One of the people that came in was a prominent Hollywood producer. And I guess I was pretty, nervy that day that I said, hey, would you be willing to watch a scene? And I did a little scene for him. He said, that's pretty good. I'll send you to an agent. So he sent me to an agent who's the first thing the agent said is, I can't get work for the actors I've got. I would never take anybody new. The only reason I'll take you is because this producer sent you to me, and don't expect to work for a year. And if you do, you might get one line. Well, now that wasn't terribly encouraging. Nevertheless, I was still happy. I had gone to see a real agent. So it was like a couple weeks later, I got a call from someone in the office, and they said, there's something going on at 20th Century Fox. And this is your first interview, and we got it set up for you. I said, well, do you know what it is? They said, no, we don't know what it is. They're just seeing a bunch of young guys. Go over there tomorrow at 4:30. So I went to 20th Century Fox on Pico Boulevard in West Los Angeles the next day, and they let me park, and I went to a bungalow, and I met this casting director. I had never met a casting director. He asked me a couple of questions. He didn't say anything about what the role was, and he said, would you like to meet the executive producer? I said, sure. I figured everybody got to meet the executive producer. Well, that's not true, but I didn't know it. So I went to another bungalow. I walked in and I met this executive producer, William Dozier, a very famous man. He'd been a vice president at CBS. He created those Hallmark Hall of Fame movies. I mean, very, very prominent executive producer. And not having ever been on an interview and not ever having been rejected, I think I was different than the typical actor who goes in wounded, and is so emotionally distraught they're afraid to speak practically. And I said, hello, sir. And I shook his hand, and he was kind of taken aback by me being so direct. He said, looked at me for a minute. He said, you're kind of big for this part. I said, oh, but sir, I promise you, I won't grow anymore. Well, he laughed. I mean, how could you stop growing? And he asked me a couple more questions and then said, would you like to do a screen test? I said, sure. I figured everybody got to do a screen test. Well, that's not true either, but I didn't know that. And it was another week or two later that I went to 20th Century Fox and I did a screen test. But first they wanted to see some athletic ability because whatever the role was, I still had no idea. They wanted someone who was athletic. I was a brown belt in karate. This is in 1965. Karate only came to the United States in 1959. So most people had never heard of it. And I did some falls and throws and stuff, which was actually judo. And then I broke a board with my hand. And then they said, okay, well, we want to have you do some dialogue. Here's a script. Well, actually, it was a single page of dialogue, which just had paragraphs. Bruce and Dick, not Bruce Wayne, not Dick Grayson, just Bruce and Dick. And they said, we want to introduce you to an actor that you're going to read with. And I said, okay. I sat down. I was introduced to Adam West. Within 5 minutes, the two of us were laughing. We never stopped laughing for more than 50 years. Okay. We just got along instantly. So we did this dialogue again. I had no idea what this, nothing. Nobody told me anything. And I said, well, thank you very much. They said, well, no, wait a minute. We got one more thing for you. I said, oh, okay. They said, we want you to go on the other end of the sound stage. There's a trailer with two wardrobe guys. When you get there, they're going to help you get dressed. I said, well, I'm perfectly capable of dressing myself. They said, oh, no, you don't understand. You just go over there and you go into that trailer and they'll help you get dressed. I went all the way over to the end of that soundstage, went in the trailer. Sure enough, 2 guys there. And there was this like giant couch. I mean, it must have been 10 feet long. And it had all this stuff on it. I said, am I going to put some of this on? And they said, no, you're going to put all of it on. I said, what? Anyway, long story short, it was the most horrendous costume, the most uncomfortable thing, John, in my entire life. Everything hurt. There was not one area of my body that wasn't in some torturous pain, from the mask tickling my eyelashes, irritating my eyelashes, to the vest poking the wool through my t-shirt, to the cape pulling my head back, to the boots that didn't. Everything was wrong. But I'm a positive person, John. So as I was hobbling to get out the door, okay, I turned to these 2 wardrobe guys. I said, well, the good news here is that after another 15 or 20 minutes, I'll never have to wear this costume again. Famous last words. I did this stuff. They still didn't say anything about Batman because I'd never seen a Batman comic book, Superman. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a call from that agent to come in and sign what I thought was agency contracts, turned out to be studio contracts. And the agent said, you mean the studio didn't tell you had the job? I said, no. When I got to the studio a few days later, they said, you mean your agents didn't tell you? So 4 of the last 6 weeks that I was rotting away, wondering if I got the role, I actually had the role. And the executive producer, when I met him the first time after I got the role, he said to me, Burt, would you like to know why we hired you to play this role? I said, yes, sir. He said, we interviewed 1,100 young guys across the country over the last 13 months. And the reason we picked you is because in our mind, if there really was a Robin, forget television. I mean, if there was really a Robin, you personally would be it. So we don't want you to, quote, act. We want you to be yourself and be enthusiastic. And that's what I did for 120 episodes.
You know, you and I have never met before. I've met Adam West, but I've never met you. But just hearing that story, I immediately sense why they hired you for the role. You really do have the perfect personality for that role.
Yeah. When it comes to the enthusiasm, I didn't have much of a problem with that.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. So, people today don't realize there are, hundreds of channels on cable, countless outlets online. So people have an infinite number of options, of entertainment options. But back then, there were 3 networks. So to be on a hit TV show on a major network must have been unbelievably life-altering for you, was it?
Yes. But let me tell you, you might find it interesting. Actually, there were 2 networks at the time,
Okay.
CBS and NBC. ABC was a syndicated network. And what ABC became the 3rd network was because of Batman and Bewitched. Those 2 shows so enormously popular that it became the 3rd national network.
And didn't those networks shut off at like 2 a.m. or something?
I wasn't up that late because I had to be early on the set the next day. Yes, I do remember there was not all night programming. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So what was amazing about the show was how it appealed to both children and adults. It was the campy humor that was so infectious, and the over-the-top storytelling, all of that. Did you guys realize how broad the appeal of the show was at that time?
Yes, we did. And let me explain to you. We actually made the appeal wider because the show was written funny, okay, and played seriously. For children, it was a hero worship of Batman and Robin, crime fighters. I mean, if you were a kid, what kid wouldn't want to ride in the Batmobile, okay, fight heinous villains, climb walls, do all, ride in all the various bat things, the bat plane, the bat copter, the bat boat. I mean, it was a total thing for children. For adults, it was the nostalgia of the comic book. But back in the 60s, there was a problem for teenagers and college kids because nobody wanted to be inside watching television. They wanted to be cruising around, those drive-ins on a Friday night, with a rib in their engine. So the way we got them is we took the dialogue and we gave it subtle double meanings and insinuations. And that is what drew the college kids in the high school. They watched it for a whole different thing. It wasn't the nostalgia of the comic book. It wasn't the hero worship of the kids. It was for these double meanings, this irreverent kind of stuff that nobody had ever gotten away with. We used to say, John, that we put on our tights to put on the world. In fact, we're the superheroes that wore our underwear on the outside of our clothes.
Now, did the writers and the producers catch on to what you were doing immediately? Did anybody object, or did they embrace it immediately?
Well, it depends how far we took it. Let me give you a perfect example. There was a scene in the Batmobile in the third season with Batgirl where we had shown Batgirl the Batcave, and now we were going to, but you see, she couldn't know where it was, so we had to give her a little whiff of bat gas before she came in, and then on the way out, we had to give her another whiff of bat gas so she would be knocked out, so she wouldn't know, temporarily knocked out, so she wouldn't know where we were. So there's a scene as we're leaving, okay, and Adam was very funny. Everything this man said had double meanings. My whole life with him, amazingly funny guy, truly funny. So we had a very short thing, which was Batman saying, now you imagine we're in the Batmobile, Batman's in the driver's seat, I'm in the passenger seat, and Batgirl is kind of slumped between us because she'd been given this little bat gas. So the very simple two lines, Batman says, I say to Batman, gosh, Batman, Batgirl is very pretty. And Batman has a line like, well, I'm glad you noticed Robin shows you're growing up, or something like that. Well, Adam kept missing the dialogue. This is simple. This is two little lines, one for each of us. Why would he go through 13 takes? And now the director's panicking. He's off schedule. I mean, Adam knew that he could push it to a point where if that they would have to use that last take no matter what. You understand? Mm-hmm. So and I kept saying, geez, this is not like Adam. He doesn't mess up lines like this. Long story short, so here came the 14th one. And I say, gosh, Batman, Batgirl is very pretty. And Batman says, well, I'm glad you noticed, Robin. It shows the oncoming thrust of manhood.
Did that make it to the air or no?
Absolutely. No, you have to understand the director, the script super, they were so panicking to get through it. Well, and remember, there's a couple weeks of editing, but once it aired the following week, the censors were in, dragging us in. And I didn't mean to mess up that line. Gosh, did I say the wrong thing? Oh, yeah, right. I mean, we did this, and we were constantly, where the critics and the censors would say, well, you can't do that. You can't say this. Nobody says this on national television, kind of thing. But it was fun, and it was all in good spirit.
You mentioned the Batmobile. A friend of mine has a replica of one of the Batmobiles from one of the later movies, not the shows, yes, but the movies. And once a year, he takes it out, and he takes his daughter to school for Father-Daughter Day. And then he shows up, and, all the kids come out and take pictures with the Batmobile. But when they drive to school, it causes such a problem that they need a police escort because traffic on both sides of the road goes insane. And yes, the newscopters follow them down the highway all the way there. It was that version of the Batmobile from the movie which had the enormous tail fin in the rear. I forget which version of the movie that was, but it's a spectacular car. So did you guys ever take the Batmobile out just for the hell of it, just for a drive?
They wouldn't really let us do that. You have to understand there were 3 Batmobiles because when you're in production, you can't have something go wrong and not have a replacement. Mm. And the Batmobile that we drove was perfectly good on the outside, but on the inside, it wasn't totally finished because you had to have room for lights and cameras and stuff like that. So, and it was at the time, I think George Barris, who built it, had spent, I think it was $150,000. So, and that was a lot of money in 1966. So we didn't really go out. I mean, we weren't really allowed to do that. It's not as much all the fun things that you'd like to do as you think. Working on a sound stage 14 hours a day, you basically sit for 45 minutes while they light a scene and you work for 30 seconds, John. Then you sit for another 45 minutes and work for another 30 seconds. I mean, the glamour is after it's all put together and the magic and the pows and the zaps and the music and all of that, color, that's when all of a sudden it becomes the Batman that we all know and love.
So how many days to film each episode? Are we talking a week or two, or how long?
It ended up being 6 days to make each 1/2 hour, and we made 120 of them.
And what studio was it filmed at?
Well, it was owned by 20th Century Fox, but because they had all these other shows going on at the time, Lost in Space and a number of other shows, that we ended up filming most of it at Desi Lou Culver. That's the old Desi Lucy studio in Culver City, California, not far from 20th Century Fox.
Isn't that where Star Trek was also filmed?
No, because Star Trek was a Paramount TV series. 20th Century Fox, of course, completely different than Paramount.
For some reason, I thought Lucy and her husband did the Star Trek series at Desilu Studios. But anyway,
yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, I could be wrong. But knowing that it was a Paramount, series, most of the studios sort of like keep an arm's length from each other.
So as a kid, I was a huge Bruce Lee fan. So you're going to
Yes.
have to suffer through a few Bruce Lee questions for me here.
Okay, my pleasure.
Is it true that you were close friends with Bruce and that he filmed his first fight scene with you?
Yes, that is true. Actually, we met because we lived in the same condominium complex in West Los Angeles, and we actually used to spar together. That's where you fight, but you kind of pull your punches. It's still very rough. Don't misunderstand me. And Bruce trained 8 hours a day. We were also friends. I mean, I remember when he and his wife Linda and his son Brandon was 6 months old at the time, and we went down into Chinatown and we had all the most authentic food because Bruce had lived in Hong Kong for 10 years. But he was amazing, and his first film fight scene of his career was fighting me on Batman, because we had the same executive producer, and there was the executive producer William Dozier that did produce Batman, also produced the Green Hornet. And what a great way to introduce it for the fall season than to have us come on to our show, which was the #1 and #2 show in the entire world at the time.
Now, did you help Bruce get that job?
No. He definitely got it by himself, but we were surprised that, but we were friends, and of course, we really, when we sparred, it was rough, but they didn't want that on Batman. Batman had to be a different kind of, it wasn't real violence. It's simulated violence. It's kind of superhero violence where nobody really gets hurt. If somebody takes a chair and bangs it over your head, you fall down, but in 2 seconds you're up again, and there's never any blood and never any real wounding. It's something that is it's bigger than life. And that's what made the show such an appeal.
So you shoot the scene, and then I imagine Bruce goes home and watches himself on TV for the first time. What was that like? Did you guys discuss it?
He had a very satirical sense of humor. He was really not a really smart person. I mean, and he trained like 8 hours a day. I mean, I've never seen anybody in my life train like he trained. But I don't know. I wasn't there when he watched the show, but he had this happy-go-lucky attitude that, and which is very similar to my attitude, which is, hey, look, if everything is fine, great. If it's not, okay, life is imperfect, we'll move on, that type of thing. So I'm sure he was very happy with it. And he was very intense with anything he did. I mean, he was like super focused, if you can imagine. There was, and yet at the same time, he could sit there and we could talk about stuff and laugh and have lunch or dinner, whatever it is. And it was a great, I had no idea at the time that he was going to be as, the #1 martial artist in the entire world cinematically.
So what was it like to watch him attain megastardom and then watch him die at such an early age?
Well, it was really sad. I would run into him at some of the tournaments, the karate tournaments. He would visit the tournaments and do demonstrations, and I would see him there. And it was this all happened, of course, overseas. It didn't happen here, and nobody seems to be 100% sure exactly what happened, although it was supposedly a brain aneurysm that he had. And other than that, I really don't know the details. It was a terrible loss. I mean, here's a person that was he was a really nice person too. You know what I mean? He was cocky. There's no question about that. But it was because he knew exactly what he was doing. And one of the things that he kept, emphasizing in our conversations together was, you work and train, whatever you're doing, and then you refine so that you get the most effect with the least amount of effort.
So the Batman TV show was always famous for having a lot of celebrity guest stars on it. Did any of them go on to become longtime friends of yours after the show?
Frank Gorshin, the Riddler, was he came to our house, and we were personal friends, and we did personal appearances together after the show. Adam and I and Frank and Julie Newmar. Julie we became friendly with, and Leanne Merriweather, who played Catwoman in the Batman movie we did. We would run into each other, but I adored Frank. He was just an amazingly funny, wonderful, terrific guy. He was deathly afraid of dogs. And of course, we operate the world's largest giant breed dog rescue here. So he would come over and see these giant Great Danes. And we're talking 200 to 300 pound dogs. Most people have never seen a 200-pound dog, much less a 300-pound dog. We had the world's largest dog here at one time. And he was so terrified, but once he got a hold, he understood, and that they meant no harm, and they just were like big babies. He actually enjoyed them, and then we would go out for dinner, and it was great. I love Frank. I loved Adam. Everybody, we all got along. It was like one big family.
Is it true that you were a speed reading champion back in the day?
Yes. Actually, I started studying in high school. Average reader reads about, let's see here, 200 words a minute with 40% comprehension. I studied for years at Beverly Hills High and then on at UCLA, and I attained the highest speed was right at 30,000 words a minute with 90% comprehension. I was tested by the American Medical Society in Beverly Hills and clocked at that speed. And to give you an idea, I was also, when I was at UCLA, I read War and Peace, which is 1,447 pages in 45 minutes. And I got an A on an essay final in my humanities class. So yeah, but I trained. It's like Bruce Lee training for his, thing. If you train and train and train, you can get great results. So at one point I became supposedly, I don't know if anybody else ever attained that speed, the world's fastest reader.
What does the average speed reader read at what?
240 words a minute with 40% comprehension.
So
I read 30,000. It's like reading the entire play of Macbeth in 1 minute.
So that's a quantum increase. So what did your father do for a living, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, my father believed in an early work ethic. I started working at age 2 in my father's traveling ice show as the world's youngest professional ice skater at age 2. And later on, he sold the show and moved to Beverly Hills, became a very prominent, one of the top 3 real estate brokers in Beverly Hills. I went to Beverly High, I went to UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara for one semester, and then on to UCLA. And I was in my 3rd year at UCLA. I had placed in the top 3% in the country in math and science in the college level when I got the role of Batman, and the dean begged me not to leave. She said I should have been a nuclear physicist.
Yeah, that's a quantum increase in speed. It's quite dramatic. How did that help you later on in life? Were you able to consume extraordinary volumes of information at that speed, or is that simply a selective thing that you do?
No, you can, but it's work. It's like you have to, in order to speed read, you're looking for who, what, why, when, and where, and you eliminate the articles like the, and, a, and what. So, and like, for example, there was a prominent course in speed reading where people use their hand. The way you do it is you have to glance and see a page at a time. And you do that by training, one of the things is called space reading, where you never look at the line, you look at the space between the lines and relax your eyes so that you can see both lines at the same time. And it's very hard. It's like learning to play the piano. You can't get your fingers to do what you want them to do. But then you end up learning to glance at paragraphs and then the whole page at a time. And that's how I was able to achieve that speed.
How long would it take you to consume the average book with reasonable retention and recall?
Well, I don't speed read anymore because it's work.
Back in the day.
But I'm saying even so now I read probably 10 times faster than the average reader. Okay. And I have a near photographic memory. So it was so frustrating for my dear friend Adam because he had a teleprompter and he still goofed up the teleprompter. And I never had a teleprompter because I could memorize my lines and get it right on the first take. And Adam would say, "Burt, stop it. You're making me look bad."
Now, you've been doing comic book conventions for years, and everyone we talk to says how great you and Adam were with the fans at these shows.
Yes.
When the economy fully opens up again, do you plan to do more conventions?
I think I'm going to do them virtually because there is new technology where I can go anywhere in the entire world and meet people. Yes, granted, it's not physically shaking their hand, but before I would meet people and, some of them would shake hands, some would just hand me an autographed photo to sign. But now with the new technology, not only can I actually get their name and sign, but it comes out on a printer on their end in a real Sharpie with the actual ink on a perfectly glossy photograph, just as though I was there. But even more importantly, they get a video of our meeting. So when they leave, it's not just leaving with a photo as we did in all those years, but a photo and a disc that they could put on their website or show their friends. And it's a permanent thing of showing the meeting of the people.
Now, I understand that you and your wife have founded a Gentle Giants rescue and adoption company or foundation, I guess, to help save Great Danes and other large dogs. And every time I see a Great Dane in public, I am amazed at how dignified and friendly they are.
Yes.
How did you develop such an affinity for Great Danes?
Well, it's more than Great Danes. What happened was this. 26 years ago, my wife and I moved where we were from the beach, where we had a beautiful 4-story house overlooking the water. We had a daughter, and when the minute I saw my 2.5-year-old daughter go out into a balcony on the 4th floor, that was it. We said, we're moving. We're going to get to a place that's on 1 floor where maybe our daughter could grow up and with some trees and stuff, because property at the beach is so valuable you hardly get anything. So we moved here about an hour east of Los Angeles, believe it or not, to the last Western town in America where horses have the right of way over cars, where you drive down the street and instead of seeing dotted white lines, you see dotted red, white, and blue lines. I mean, you talk about Americana. This is the place. So we decided to get her a dog, and I had a lot of experience in dogs because I had a security issue, and I had trained Dobermans when I was doing Batman because of these appearances. And so I was already an expert animal handler, and so was my wife. She started with dogs when she was 3 years of age, but we got ourselves a large dog for our daughter to grow up with, which happened to be a Great Dane we rescued. And then we heard about another one that needed rescue. We got that one. And then the other ones we heard about that people were needing to give up, but they were still in the dog's home. I mean, the people's home. So there wasn't immediate danger of death in a shelter. And it turned out that when we didn't take the others, people had to finally give them up. They went to shelters, and there's too many animals in shelters, and they put them down. All these Great Danes were dying. So the first week of August of 1994, I said to my wife, Tracy, I said, we can't let this happen. I mean, just for a couple of weeks till I get somebody else to take this over. Let us save these dogs. Okay, Great Danes. And because every breed of dog has a rescue, but apparently whoever was rescuing Great Danes in Southern California herself had died. And now nobody was saving these dogs. So by the end of August of 1994, I had 102 full-size Great Danes in my home. Every one of the dogs that we've rescued has lived in our home, not in some building, not in a yard, not somewhere foster home. I mean, in our home. We've always had a minimum of 50 in our house for 26 years. We've rescued 15,500 dogs. We feed 600 pounds a day of our dog food. And we actually have 45 different breeds here, because people would come and drop off their Great Dane and say, well, I've got my Sheltie here. I guess since you don't take Shelties, I'll just take him to the shelter and they'll put him to sleep. And Tracy and I look at each other. No, leave that dog here. I mean, and my wife has now redefined a Great Dane. If it has 4 legs and a tail, it must be a Great Dane. Okay. So yes, basically all dogs we were taking. But here's the thing. We found out that these giant breed dogs traditionally only live 7 to 9 years, and Mastiffs and Irish Wolfhounds live only 6 to 8 years. And if we didn't adopt one and we lost one, we were so devastated. So we vowed, and this was like within 2 years of starting the rescue, that if we could find a way to help them live longer, we would. And we developed a feeding and care program, which we still use. And that added an average of 3 to 4 years to every dog's life on average. That is gigantic. So Great Danes that were living 7 to 9 years were now living a minimum of 10 to 12 years. And then we decided the only other thing we could do to help them live longer was make a food for our rescue. Never thought about selling it. We made this food, and we have dogs living, John, to 27 years, running around like puppies. Our Great Danes, the oldest one we got is 22. That's triple their lifespan. But we have dogs consistently living twice their normal lifespan with a food that is different than everybody else's, with a feeding and care program. And this is my wife and I, even though it's a business, we take no salary from it. We don't take a single dime in salary, and we have a very sophisticated business operation. I don't know if you know my wife's background. My wife, Tracy, her father was Forbes 400. And her father was Victor Posner, one of the most famous corporate raiders in America, one of the biggest. Okay. And Tracy and him ran their companies. I met her in 1989. And she and her father owned 3,600 companies then, with annual sales of $26 billion. Every week on average, they bought a company for 150 million to 200 million a week. So my wife is like the ultimate. She's like a human computer, and yet beautiful. And
I have to say, I thought managing 60 Great Danes was a lot until you told me about the management of the 3,000 companies.
Yeah, well, two of the companies. One is called Arby's. They make roast beef sandwich. She owned Arby's. She owned RC Cola. They controlled all the tree trimming in the 7 southern states. They owned National Propane. I mean, this was a multiple conglomerates worldwide, just gigantic. And Tracy ran them with her father, and she's just the most down to earth person. You would never know that, of her business success. And I think she was written up in the Wall Street Journal at age 21 as being on the boards of 14 stock exchange companies at age 21. So together we have built this wonderful thing, which we take as our charity. We have dogs living twice their normal lifespan, the majority of them, unless, of course, they got cancer or got hit by a car. But we've done this, and we built this amazing thing. And now we're all across the country now. We're in Walmart, we're in Target, we're in online, all the retailers. But this coming August, we're launching our first national 3 commercials nationally, and we're buying hundreds of thousands of television spots because people love their dogs. And there's 80 million in the US, and they can all be living twice and triple their lifespan. And we're the only ones that have been able to do it. And now we have our new cat food as well. So from a business standpoint, we work 7 days a week. And we have the most amazing operation. We have no employees. We take no salary. We have our beautiful estate that we live on, so the company has no overhead for rent. I mean, it's just from a business standpoint, this is like something that most people have never even imagined. And this is my wife's tremendous background in operating her companies with 200,000 employees.
So I have to tell you that I haven't cried since I was a little kid. I'm just not an emotional guy.
Right.
But I had a golden retriever. And when the golden retriever died at the age of 10, I cried like a little kid. I couldn't believe where all these tears were coming from.
Yes.
I could not believe it. I have gone to the funerals of humans and not shed a tear. But when this dog was so faithful, so loving, that I couldn't believe how affected I was by this. So my question to you is, what do you guys put in your dog food that extends the lifespan of these dogs so dramatically?
I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you exactly how we do it. Okay. All right. Here's what it is. There's actually, think of it this way. If you had a combination lock, where you turn it to the left to a certain number, then turn it back to the right, and then back to the left. With a combination lock, you have to get all those numbers right, or the lock doesn't open. Well, the way we have dogs living long is very similar to that. There's 3 things: how you care for your dog, number 1. Number 2, how you feed your dog. And number 3, what you feed your dog. When it comes to our food, there's 2 gigantic things that make a gigantic difference that other dog food companies don't do. Number 1, if you have a dog now, or any of your friends do, ask them to hand you a few of the kibbles that they feed their dog. Rub them in your fingers, then put them down and rub your fingers together, and you're going to feel that slightly greasy feeling. You may remember that if you ever cleaned out your dog's bowl or you ever reached down into the bag, that slightly greasy feeling. Dog food companies spray, and they fill their dog food with a lot of fat, and they spray the outside with fat. Why would they do such a thing? It makes dogs hungrier to eat more food. A human example, 10 years ago in Ohio, when Morgan Spurlock went into McDonald's and ate every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a snack. Okay, he gained 55 pounds and almost died. They made a movie called Super Size Me. Same principle. High fat content produces empty calories. It makes the animals eat more. You sell more dog food. But we don't care about selling more dog food. We care about dogs living longer. A big difference. That's number one. Number two, GMOs. Genetically modified organisms. In today's world, for example, rice. 98% of the rice in the United States is GMO rice. Why is it GMO rice? Because if you grow rice and it's attacked by pests and you spray a pesticide on it to kill the pests, it kills the plant. But by re-engineering the plant to survive the pesticide, the plant lives, the rice is produced, but the pesticide is absorbed in the plant. Dogs and cats don't live, their bodies aren't designed as well as ours. They're much more frail physically than we are. And they pick up. And so we have on our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com, you might find it very interesting. We have a section called Special Feeding and Care Program that tells you exactly how to do what we do to have your dogs live twice as long, or maybe 3 times as long. But also, excuse me, there is a video on GMOs. We didn't produce it. We got it from another site. And just listen to this, John. All these top veterinarians are saying basically the same thing, which is 10, 15, 20 years ago, they would have 1 patient a month die of cancer. Now, every single day, 1 out of every 2 dogs or cats has got cancer. And they attribute this to the GMOs in the food. We're one of the only companies, very few, if any, other companies that have no GMOs in our food. Costs us twice as much to make the food, but guess what? The dogs are not dying from cancer. I mean, that's not to say a dog can't get cancer, because anything can happen. But here at our rescue, we have always a minimum of 50 dogs, and our dogs here are so healthy. The only time they go to a veterinarian is every 3 years for a $10 rabies update. We don't have other illnesses here.
So are the primary ingredients of your dog food, is it protein? Is it vegetable? Is it something else?
It's balanced with it's not what we have in it. We have, well, actually, it is in one respect. Ours is pure nutrition. We don't have fillers. We don't have artificial preservatives. We don't have chemicals. We have food that we buy from the best sources.
So what is the name of your dog food, and where can people purchase it?
It's called Gentle Giants Dog and Puppy Food. It's available Walmarts and Targets all across the country. Every online company, Chewy.com, Walmart, Target.com, PetSmart.com, Petco.com, Tractor Supply. They all have our food, and a lot of grocery stores have our food. And I think this year, and by the way, in Canada, we're all throughout all the Walmarts in Canada, all 410 Walmarts carry Gentle Giants.
I'll tell you something. You mentioned that part of the success of your dog food stems from the fact that the dogs eat less.
Yes.
And this is very interesting to me, because I began practicing something called intermittent fasting about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And one of the tenets of intermittent fasting is you eat during a specified eating window, and then you fast for the rest of the day. Some people fast for 12 hours. Some people fast for 14. So I started doing this, and I have now worked my way up to fasting for 20 hours a day and only eating for 4 hours a day.
Right.
And this is going to sound very implausible to people who are unfamiliar with intermittent fasting. But I have been lifting weights since I was 16. I have never smoked, drank, or done drugs in my entire life. So I've always been a high energy guy, always very fit. But when I started this intermittent fasting, and now I'm only eating 4 hours a day, my energy level has tripled. My need for sleep has been cut in half. I find it difficult to sleep for more than 5 hours. Difficult.
Yes.
And it's very, very transformative. So whether it's humans or dogs, I think there is something very, very profound about eating less and the way it assists the digestive process, the entire body. There's a reason every major religion on earth practices fasting at some point throughout the year.
Yes.
And this goes back thousands of years. There's a reason for that. They discovered something very early on, very, very strong connection. How have you been spending your time during the pandemic over the last year?
Well, we stay at home, but we have our own world here. I mean, we have everything we need and we're very happy. And yet, like I could do interviews and talk with you and meet people over the internet. And, when I was on the road, you have to understand, I traveled for 50 years on the road. Okay. 25 of those years, I did 300 cities a year. I lived out of a suitcase. So, I'm not even inclined to drive to the grocery store now with all that traveling that I did. But we are really very happy. My wife and I, we have a large, beautiful estate, and we're in our back, we're building a recording studio. We're going to be doing all our own recording and all of our digital animation. We're creating TV series and we're going to do some films. And we actually have another building. We're building our own sound stage on our property. So we're really fortunate. We're in a very, and yet we do total charity, and we get more pleasure doing things for others than doing for ourselves. So we have like the ultimate. I'm very fortunate. I'm so happily married, 31 years of marriage, and it just every day is precious. And in fact, I have a thing I'd like to say to you and to your listeners, that there are 3 essentials to happiness. John, would you like to know the 3 essentials to happiness?
Yes, absolutely.
The 3 essentials to happiness that I have discovered is 1, someone to love; 2, something to do; and 3, something to look forward to. If you have those 3 things, you're pretty happy.
Do you have any children? And if so, what did they think the first time they saw Dad as Batman on TV?
Yeah, the way I describe it is I have 2 human children, and I've had 15,500 canine kids. And I love my human kids, but I do have to say one thing about my canine kids. And that is, not one of those 15,500 ever asked me to buy them a car.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. Yeah. Now, but I do have 2 children. I have an older daughter and a younger daughter. Tracy and I have our daughter together. And my first daughter is Tracy is kind of like adopted her. She is older. I'm very unfortunate. She's on life support in a hospital, and has been for 3 years. So with all of the fun things that I do in life, I also have a very serious situation that every week I speak to my daughter, who unfortunately, because of an asthmatic attack that the ambulance couldn't get there in time, her heart stopped. The blood stopped going to her brain, and they got her alive. But she has severe brain damage, so she can hear me and can't talk, but because she has oxygen and has a feeding tube for 3 years. But we're hoping that she's going to recover. And I talk to her every week, and I love her very much. So it just shows you that things in life. All of us have things that we have to face and deal with in life. And it can be difficult sometimes.
Burt, the fact that you've been taking care of your daughter for the last 3 years on life support impresses me 1,000 times more than all the other great achievements that you've had. It really does. This tells me volumes about you.
Yeah.
And I'll say something else, and I can edit this out if you like as well.
Right.
The stem cell research that I'm hearing about now being done domestically and offshore.
Yes.
Revolutionary. So just because today she's hindered by what happened years ago doesn't mean that they will not be able to reverse that in a few years with the latest stem cell technology.
I believe that. I believe that. Well, she was on a ventilator for 1.5 years. And every time they would try to take her off, what would happen is she would panic and they'd have to put it on. And I said to them, wait a minute, I think you're making a big mistake. They said, what? You mean we want to test to see if she can breathe? I said, yes, but you need to warn her just before you do it. Tell her that you're going to be taking her, because she can hear perfectly. She can't talk. And poor thing, she can only turn her head, her hands and feet and bodies can't move. And I said, but tell her you're going to do it. And tell her to prepare herself to try to breathe. And they did it, and it worked. So now she only has this thing that goes into the neck because she can't fully take the air in, but she's off the ventilator, which, oh my God, the tube down the throat, and it was just horrendous. So she's making progress, and we hope everything is going to be fine. And Tracy, my wife, I mean, she is just the greatest. And every week we talk to her. And I will tell you one thing that I was so impressed with my daughter, my older daughter, with as little life, John, as she has left in her body, as little life as it is, meaning you can't do anything. You can't scratch yourself. You can't move. You can't talk. You're completely, all you can do is open your eyes and hear, and she can react to the things I say facially. With such little life left, she appreciates it. She values it. I can tell that she wants to live. And, it touches me so greatly, because all of us I don't think realize how lucky we are to be even reasonably healthy, how precious life is. It's the most precious commodity in the world. I found it in our animals. I found it in my daughter. I find it in my own life. All of us should respect life, and we should try to make life better for everybody else here.
Burt, I'm so glad you got her off the ventilator. I always thought ventilators were lifesavers. And of course, under many circumstances, they are. But with this pandemic, with COVID infecting so many people, the first thing the doctors all did was they would put people on ventilators.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing, and what a lot of people are hearing, is that protracted stays on a ventilator cause embolisms and kill people.
Yes.
So that's always something to be mindful of. Julian Newmar played Catwoman on Batman, and I met her a few years ago, and she was unbelievably charming and likable. What was your experience with her?
Julie is the only person, because she's very unpredictable. Julie is the only person I ever met, other than Adam, that you never knew what was about to come out of their mouth. And Adam was such a fun-loving, like, you just couldn't throw him on anything you could say to him. And yet when he was around Julie, he was even cautious, because she could come out with these things, and she's adorable and beautiful and so intelligent, but she's so unpredictable. And I think it's because she's so brilliant that she thinks in ways that you would never think, and she says things that, like, oh my gosh, but I've always found her fun and just delightful, and I have the greatest love and respect for her.
Yeah, I was amazed at the energy, the playfulness, the flirtation, the wit in the conversation. It was a pleasant surprise. It really was. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Actually, it's been surprisingly pleasant, actually. I want to wish you all the best. Well, listen, it was an absolute joy having you on the show. Give our best to Tracy, and you are always welcome back on the show, sir. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, citizen. And as we said on Batman, to the Batmobile!
There you go. Well, Burt, I feel like I've made a new friend. I
You
want
have.
to wish you all the best, and I'll get that stuff to you soon.
Okay, and if you ever get another pet, don't hesitate. Call us up if you have any questions. My wife, Tracy, I am telling you, she is like the Mother Teresa of dogs. She personally cares for animals 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for the last 26 years. You'll never find anybody more knowledgeable about care for animals than my wife, Tracy.
I love golden retrievers, but there's a guy on YouTube who has a Great Dane that he likes to take out for daily walks, and he films himself taking the dog. The dog's name is Cash. I don't know if you've seen his videos.
No, I haven't seen it.
He walks Cash around Beverly Hills, and he walks him up and down Venice Beach. And Cash is like a rock star. Everybody wants to pet him. And he's oblivious to how popular he is. He just takes it for granted, like most rock stars. And so they're fun videos to watch. So when I saw those videos, I thought of you guys immediately. So, Burt, if most people loved other human beings as much as you guys love these animals, I think the world would be a much better place.
I agree with you. I agree with you, my friend. And as I say to everybody, just remember, the first 100 years are the hardest, John. After that, it's pretty smooth sailing.
All right. Thanks once again. And we'll,
thank you. Long distance handshake, my friend.
Bye-bye. Say goodbye to all the dogs. Say goodbye to all the Great Danes as well.
I will. Take care. God bless.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks again for watching. And I want to tell you that we're going to have more great celebrity interviews and more breaking news stories coming up in the future. So we want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free and click on the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post a new story. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you soon. Bye-bye.